My wife texted me, "Family helps family, you're never here anyway," when I confronted her about transferring our $420,000 investment account to her brother during my Afghanistan deployment. My name is Staff Sergeant Michael Stone, 37 years old, military intelligence specialist with 12 years of service in counterintelligence operations and strategic security analysis. I had built our financial foundation through systematic military savings programs and comprehensive investment planning that ensured long-term financial security while serving our nation's defense interests overseas. When Lisa Stone explained that my deployment absence justified redistributing our accumulated wealth to help her financially struggling brother, I simply replied, "I understand your position regarding family support obligations." What Lisa didn't realize was that my methodical approach to military financial planning included comprehensive documentation and power of attorney restrictions that would expose her violation of deployment-related asset protection laws while I was serving in active combat operations. The discovery occurred on a Tuesday evening during my routine secure communications check at Forward Operating Base Shank in Afghanistan's Paktika province. Lisa had sent a brief message through our encrypted family communication system explaining that she had handled some financial restructuring to help her brother David through his business difficulties. "Michael, your deployment schedule prevents you from understanding our family's immediate financial needs," Lisa wrote in her characteristically defensive tone. "David's construction business is facing foreclosure, and family obligations require immediate action that can't wait for military bureaucracy." I reviewed the message while monitoring intelligence operations for potential threats to coalition forces, noting the vague language and Lisa's unusual emphasis on financial urgency that seemed designed to justify hasty decision-making. "Lisa, can you provide specific details about the financial restructuring and which accounts were affected?" I responded through secure military channels while maintaining operational focus on my counterintelligence responsibilities. Lisa's reply arrived 6 hours later, with explanations that seemed designed to avoid technical specifics about asset transfers and authorization procedures. "Michael, family emergencies require immediate financial response that military personnel can't provide from deployment locations. David needed $420,000 to save his business, so I transferred our investment account to help him maintain his construction company." The response raised immediate concerns. Yet, Lisa was discussing asset transfers that exceeded her authorized power of attorney limitations and violated military spouse financial protection protocols that were specifically designed to prevent this type of deployment exploitation. "Which specific authorization procedures did you follow for the $420,000 investment account transfer?" I asked during our scheduled encrypted video call. Lisa appeared uncomfortable during the secure connection, avoiding direct responses while reviewing printed financial documents. "Michael, your military duties prevent hands-on involvement in family financial decisions. I have power of attorney authorization to manage our finances during your deployment." I maintained professional courtesy while internally noting Lisa's evasive language about specific authorization limits and her reluctance to discuss military financial protection requirements. "I understand the family situation. What timeline did the bank establish for account transfer verification and military approval procedures?" Lisa gathered her paperwork with visible irritation. "Michael, your deployment prevents understanding of immediate family needs. The bank handled all documentation according to standard financial transfer procedures." I thanked Lisa for managing family financial matters during my deployment and ended the call. Then I immediately contacted the Base Legal Assistance Office about military spouse financial protection regulations and deployment-related asset security. The military legal assistance officer, Captain Jennifer Martinez, reviewed my preliminary concerns and immediately recognized potential violations of both power of attorney limitations and federal military financial protection laws. "Staff Sergeant Stone, if your spouse transferred major assets without proper military authorization, she may have violated the Service Members Civil Relief Act in addition to power of attorney restrictions," Captain Martinez explained. The documentation I maintained through military financial protocols included comprehensive records of every investment decision, power of attorney limitation, and authorization requirement for asset transfers during deployment periods. Captain, our investment accounts require dual authorization for any transfers exceeding $50,000, I explained. These restrictions were specifically established to prevent unauthorized asset access during combat deployments. The military financial protection laws I had followed during account establishment created detailed audit trails that tracked every transaction authorization, power of attorney limitation, and deployment protection requirement. Your military financial documentation provides comprehensive evidence of power of attorney restrictions and asset protection requirements, Captain Martinez noted. We need to immediately verify whether proper military authorization procedures were followed for major asset transfers. The automated banking systems I had implemented tracked every account access with timestamps, authorization verification, and military compliance markers that would expose unauthorized modifications. What I discovered during the first hour of analysis was sufficient evidence to request immediate legal intervention and federal military financial protection review. The banking records showed that Lisa had systematically circumvented dual authorization requirements during my deployment, claiming emergency family circumstances that didn't meet military financial protection criteria. Lisa bypassed dual authorization requirements by claiming family emergency status that doesn't qualify under military financial protection regulations, I documented. Her unauthorized asset transfer violates federal deployment protection laws. The technical evidence revealed not just power of attorney violations, but potential federal crimes involving systematic exploitation of deployed military personnel and violation of federal service member protection statutes. Captain Martinez reviewed my preliminary evidence and immediately recommended comprehensive military legal review and potential federal criminal investigation. Staff Sergeant Stone, unauthorized transfer of deployed service member assets constitutes federal violations of military protection laws, she advised. Your systematic documentation provides comprehensive evidence for both military justice and federal civilian proceedings. The Service Members Civil Relief Act included specific provisions against financial exploitation during deployment periods that Lisa had systematically violated through her unauthorized asset transfer. Lisa's asset transfer violates explicit SCRA protections designed to prevent financial exploitation of deployed service members, I documented. Her coordination with her brother constitutes systematic violation of federal military protection laws. Lisa's confidence about family financial decisions was about to encounter military legal assistance and federal protection enforcement that would expose every aspect of her unauthorized asset manipulation. Have you ever discovered that someone exploited your military deployment to steal family assets while claiming family emergency justification? Military financial protection laws provide comprehensive safeguards against deployment-related asset exploitation by family members and associates. My 12-year military career had been built on the foundation of disciplined financial planning and systematic asset protection that ensured long-term security while serving in high-risk intelligence operations across multiple combat deployments. The expertise I had developed in counterintelligence analysis and threat assessment extended naturally to comprehensive financial planning that protected both military and family interests during extended overseas assignments. I had enlisted in the United States Army in 2012 after completing my bachelor's degree in criminal justice at Arizona State University, where I specialized in intelligence analysis and federal law enforcement, with additional focus on financial crimes and asset protection strategies. Staff Sergeant Stone's analytical capabilities and systematic approach to threat assessment provide exceptional intelligence support for counterintelligence operations, noted performance evaluation from Major Robert Chen, Intelligence Operations Director. The military financial planning methodology I had developed emphasized comprehensive documentation and systematic asset protection that ensured optimal security while maintaining accessibility for legitimate family needs during deployment periods. Stone's approach to military financial management provides security and stability that enables focus on mission-critical intelligence operations without family financial concerns. Documented quarterly review from 2018. The progression to Staff Sergeant and counterintelligence specialization had reflected recognition of my systematic approach to threat analysis and security planning that exceeded standard military intelligence capabilities. Lisa Stone had joined our relationship in 2016 when my military career was expanding beyond individual intelligence analysis to leadership roles in counterintelligence operations that required extended deployment periods and comprehensive security clearance maintenance. Lisa's administrative background and family management experience will provide stability during your deployment schedule, I had reasoned when we married and established joint financial planning arrangements. Lisa brought solid organizational skills and claimed experience in family financial management, though her attitudes toward military service obligations and deployment requirements had gradually created tension within our systematic approach to long-term financial planning. Michael, your military deployments create financial stress that interferes with family stability, Lisa had complained regularly during pre-deployment planning sessions. Extended overseas assignments prevent normal family financial management and create unnecessary complications. I had consistently explained that military service and deployment obligations were fundamental aspects of our financial security and long-term planning that actually enhanced rather than compromised our economic stability. Lisa, military service provides comprehensive benefits and systematic income that enable superior financial planning compared to civilian employment, I would respond during financial discussions. Deployment pay and combat bonuses create accelerated savings opportunities that civilian careers cannot match. But Lisa viewed military deployments as obstacles to immediate family gratification rather than strategic advantages that enabled systematic wealth accumulation and long-term financial security. Deployment schedules conflict with family financial needs and prevent responsive decision-making, Lisa had argued during budget planning sessions. The $420,000 investment account that had precipitated Lisa's unauthorized transfer represented years of systematic military savings, combat pay accumulation, and strategic investment planning that had been specifically designed to ensure family financial security. Our investment portfolio provides long-term financial security through systematic military savings and strategic asset allocation, I had documented during financial planning discussions. The power of attorney restrictions I had established were designed to protect accumulated assets while ensuring Lisa could manage routine family expenses and emergency situations that met specific criteria for legitimate family financial needs. Power of attorney limitations ensure family financial access while protecting long-term assets from impulsive decisions or unauthorized transfers, our legal documentation specified. But Lisa had apparently been studying these financial protection provisions while coordinating with her brother David to circumvent asset protection protocols during my combat deployment. The systematic documentation I maintained through military financial services included detailed records of every investment decision, deployment protection requirement, and authorization procedure for major asset transactions. Military financial documentation ensures comprehensive protection and accountability for all asset management decisions during deployment periods, I had established as fundamental financial protocol. The automated monitoring systems I had implemented provided real-time tracking of all account activities, authorization attempts, and compliance verification that would expose unauthorized access or asset manipulation. But Lisa had been exploiting her legitimate access to routine family financial management while planning systematic circumvention of deployment asset protection during my Afghanistan assignment. The combat deployment to Afghanistan that had enabled Lisa's asset theft represented my third overseas intelligence assignment, involving counterintelligence operations against insurgent financial networks and strategic threat assessment for coalition forces. Staff Sergeant Stone's counterintelligence expertise provides critical analysis of insurgent funding sources and operational capabilities, noted deployment evaluation from Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Davis. The operational security requirements that governed my deployment activities included comprehensive communication monitoring and restricted family contact procedures that were designed to protect both military operations and family security. Deployment operational security ensures protection of intelligence operations while maintaining essential family communication through secure military channels. I had explained to Lisa during pre-deployment briefings. The time zone differences and operational demands that characterized combat deployment created natural limitations on family communication that required systematic coordination and understanding of military operational priorities. But Lisa had apparently been exploiting these communication limitations to coordinate unauthorized asset transfers, while I was focused on critical counterintelligence operations that required complete operational attention. The financial protection training I had received during military financial planning emphasized specific safeguards against deployment-related asset exploitation and family financial manipulation during overseas assignments. Military financial protection training provides comprehensive education about deployment asset security and family financial management during extended overseas service. I had documented Lisa's exploitation of my combat deployment to transfer accumulated military savings violated not just power of attorney restrictions, but also federal laws specifically designed to protect deployed service members from financial manipulation. The systematic asset protection I had implemented through military financial services was proving essential for exposing Lisa's unauthorized activities while ensuring comprehensive federal protection during deployment vulnerability. Military financial protection systems provide both individual asset security and federal enforcement capabilities when family members violate deployment protection laws, I noted. The counterintelligence expertise I had developed for detecting financial fraud and asset manipulation in military operations was directly applicable to investigating Lisa's systematic violation of military financial protection laws. Have you ever realized that military financial protection training becomes personally essential when family members exploit deployment periods for unauthorized asset transfers? Comprehensive military financial documentation provides both individual security and federal enforcement capabilities when trusted relationships become exploitative. The comprehensive investigation I conducted during my remaining deployment period revealed that Lisa's asset transfer wasn't an isolated family emergency response, but a carefully planned scheme coordinated with her brother David to systematically exploit my combat deployment for maximum financial extraction while I was unavailable to challenge their unauthorized activities. My forensic analysis of banking records and communication logs showed that Lisa had been systematically studying military financial protection laws and power of attorney limitations while coordinating with David to plan optimal timing for asset liquidation during my most operationally intensive deployment period. Lisa's financial planning activities with David began 3 months before the asset transfer. I documented through secure military communication systems. Their systematic coordination proves premeditated financial exploitation rather than emergency family assistance. The sophistication of Lisa's scheme included coordination with banking personnel who were systematically deceived about military authorization requirements and deployment asset protection laws that should have prevented unauthorized transfers. Lisa provided false representations to banking officials about emergency family circumstances and military authorization procedures, I noted while examining transaction records. Her systematic deception enabled unauthorized asset liquidation while violating federal military protection laws, but Lisa had made critical errors that would expose her systematic fraud and provide overwhelming evidence for both military justice proceedings and federal criminal prosecution. The automated banking monitoring systems I had implemented included mandatory military verification protocols and deployment protection alerts that Lisa could not circumvent without creating obvious evidence of systematic authorization fraud. Lisa's attempts to bypass military authorization requirements created comprehensive audit trails of unauthorized access attempts I compiled while reviewing system security logs. The technical evidence proves systematic asset theft rather than legitimate family emergency response. The military legal assistance team that Captain Martinez assembled reviewed my expanded evidence and immediately recognized the systematic nature of Lisa's deployment exploitation and potential federal criminal liability. Staff Sergeant Stone, Lisa's activities show classic patterns of systematic deployment exploitation involving coordination with civilian accomplices and deliberate violation of federal service member protection laws. Captain Martinez observed. The documented evidence proves intentional violation of military protection statutes and asset security regulations. The technical methods Lisa had used to facilitate her asset theft included creating false emergency documentation and submitting fraudulent family crisis claims that would justify circumventing military financial protection procedures. Lisa fabricated family emergency documentation and submitted false crisis justifications to support unauthorized asset transfers, I documented. Her systematic falsification of family circumstances constitutes fraud in addition to deployment exploitation violations. The communication analysis revealed that Lisa had been systematically coordinating with David to misrepresent the scope of family financial crisis while avoiding specific details about military authorization requirements and federal protection laws. Lisa's coordination with David included systematic planning to circumvent military authorization while creating false justification for emergency family assistance, I noted. Their documented coordination proves conspiracy rather than legitimate family support. Most concerning was Lisa's systematic access to my military financial documentation and deployment scheduling information that she had been exploiting to coordinate optimal timing for asset theft while I was focused on critical counterintelligence operations. Lisa accessed confidential military financial records and deployment operational schedules to coordinate asset theft timing, I documented. Her exploitation of military operational information enabled systematic deployment exploitation during maximum vulnerability. The family financial analysis revealed that David's claimed business emergency was fabricated to justify Lisa's asset transfer, with evidence showing that the funds were used for personal expenses rather than legitimate business crisis management. David's construction business emergency was systematically fabricated to justify Lisa's asset transfer, I noted. Financial records prove the funds were used for personal debt consolidation rather than business crisis management. The timeline analysis revealed that Lisa's deployment exploitation had accelerated during my final month of combat operations when she realized that operational intensity would prevent detailed financial oversight. Lisa's asset transfer timing coincided with peak operational tempo when counterintelligence demands prevented detailed family financial monitoring, I calculated. Her systematic exploitation of operational priorities proves premeditated deployment fraud. Captain Martinez recommended immediate federal military protection investigation and comprehensive evidence preservation to prevent Lisa from accessing additional assets or destroying incriminating documentation. Staff Sergeant Stone, we need immediate federal intervention to prevent additional asset theft, while investigators examine the full scope of systematic deployment exploitation, Captain Martinez advised. Your documentation provides comprehensive evidence for federal prosecution. The Military Criminal Investigative Service was notified about potential systematic exploitation of deployed service members involving violation of federal military protection laws and conspiracy to defraud military personnel. Lisa's activities may constitute federal military crimes that threaten service member financial security and deployment readiness, MCIS investigator Major Patricia Rodriguez explained during secure communication. The Federal Bureau of Investigation's Military Liaison Division initiated parallel investigation of potential violations of federal service member protection statutes involving systematic asset theft targeting deployed military personnel. Lisa's coordination with civilian accomplices suggests systematic exploitation of military deployment vulnerabilities, FBI investigator Michael Torres reported through military channels. The evidence compilation I was providing included comprehensive documentation of Lisa's systematic asset theft, deployment exploitation, and coordinated family fraud that violated multiple federal protection statutes. Lisa's documented activities violate federal service member protection laws, asset security regulations, and conspiracy statutes, I noted in my formal military complaint. The banking institution's compliance investigation was beginning to discover fundamental problems with Lisa's authorization claims and the military verification procedures that had been systematically circumvented through fraudulent documentation. First National Bank was systematically deceived about military authorization requirements and deployment protection procedures. Their compliance officer, Jennifer Walsh, reported to federal investigators. The systematic documentation I had maintained through military financial protocols was providing overwhelming evidence that would expose Lisa's fraud while ensuring comprehensive protection for both military assets and federal service member protection systems. Your military financial documentation creates unbreakable evidence of asset protection requirements and deployment exploitation, Captain Martinez observed. The Service Members Civil Relief Act investigation was revealing that Lisa's asset theft was part of broader family schemes targeting deployed military personnel through systematic exploitation of family relationships and deployment vulnerabilities. Lisa's coordination with David suggests systematic targeting of military families during deployment periods, federal investigator noted. Their activities threaten federal military protection systems. The military operational security implications were also significant, as Lisa's exploitation of deployment information could compromise counterintelligence operations and strategic military planning through unauthorized access to classified scheduling data. Lisa's access to deployment operational information creates security concerns beyond financial exploitation, counterintelligence security officer reported. Her activities may compromise operational security through unauthorized information access. Lisa's confidence about family financial authority was about to encounter comprehensive federal military investigation and systematic evidence that would expose every aspect of her deployment exploitation while ensuring maximum accountability for federal military protection violations. The comprehensive fraud detection I had achieved through systematic documentation was transforming attempted deployment exploitation into complete evidence for both military justice proceedings and federal civilian prosecution of military protection crimes. Have you ever discovered that military financial documentation could expose systematic deployment exploitation designed to circumvent federal service member protection laws? Military asset protection systems sometimes become essential tools for detecting sophisticated fraud schemes targeting deployed personnel through family relationships. The strategic legal and federal response that Captain Martinez and the military justice system developed required careful coordination between military legal assistance, federal service member protection enforcement, and civilian criminal prosecution to maximize asset recovery while ensuring appropriate accountability for Lisa's systematic deployment exploitation and federal military protection law violations. Staff Sergeant Stone, Lisa's unauthorized transfer of deployed service member assets creates exposure under federal military protection statutes, asset security laws, and conspiracy regulations, Captain Martinez explained during our comprehensive strategy session, conducted through secure military communication channels. The evidence you've compiled supports simultaneous military justice proceedings and federal criminal prosecution that will ensure complete asset recovery and maximum accountability. The military legal assistance strategy focused on Lisa's violations of deployment asset protection laws and unauthorized coordination with civilian accomplices that warranted immediate federal intervention and comprehensive military protection enforcement. Your power of attorney restrictions include specific military protection provisions requiring federal approval before major asset transfers, Captain Martinez noted. Lisa's unauthorized coordination with David constitutes systematic violation of federal service member protection laws. But the most immediate priority was preventing Lisa from accessing additional military assets, while federal investigators built comprehensive cases for both asset recovery and criminal prosecution under military protection statutes. We need emergency federal intervention to prevent Lisa from transferring remaining military assets while investigators examine the full scope of systematic deployment exploitation, Captain Martinez recommended. The federal criminal referral documentation I was preparing included comprehensive evidence of Lisa's systematic asset theft, deployment exploitation, and family conspiracy that warranted prosecution under federal military protection and conspiracy statutes. Lisa's activities constitute multiple federal violations including deployment exploitation, asset theft, and conspiracy to defraud military service members, Captain Martinez explained. Meanwhile, I was coordinating with counterintelligence security officers to ensure comprehensive operational security while building military protection cases and maintaining focus on critical intelligence operations. Captain Martinez, Lisa's deployment exploitation creates operational security concerns during critical counterintelligence operations, I noted through secure channels. The systematic family betrayal is compromising mission focus while threatening federal military protection systems. The technical analysis I was conducting revealed that Lisa's asset theft had affected not just personal finances, but had also compromised military family readiness and deployment effectiveness through systematic exploitation of service member vulnerabilities. Lisa's deployment exploitation reduces military family stability and deployment readiness, I documented. Her systematic asset theft threatens military personnel effectiveness through family financial manipulation. The forensic accounting that Captain Martinez arranged showed that Lisa's asset theft had been coordinated with David's debt consolidation timing, while systematically avoiding military authorization and federal protection verification procedures. Lisa's coordination with David generated $420,000 in unauthorized asset access, while avoiding military approval and federal service member protection requirements, forensic accountant Lisa Chen calculated. The financial coordination proves systematic conspiracy rather than emergency family assistance. The Military Criminal Investigative Service investigation that began within 72 hours of our complaint included comprehensive examination of Lisa's deployment exploitation methods and family coordination by experienced military protection crime specialists. Lisa's asset theft appears to constitute systematic federal military protection violations that warrant immediate criminal investigation, lead investigator Major Rodriguez reported after reviewing preliminary evidence. The federal investigation was revealing that Lisa's deployment exploitation violated multiple military protection laws, including service member asset security statutes, deployment protection regulations, and family exploitation prevention provisions. Lisa's systematic asset theft violates Service Members' Civil Relief Act protections and federal deployment security requirements, investigator Rodriguez noted. But Lisa's most serious error was systematically falsifying military emergency documentation and family crisis claims while coordinating with civilian accomplices to circumvent federal service member protection laws. Lisa created false military documentation and coordinated with David to facilitate systematic deployment exploitation, Captain Martinez observed. Her federal document fraud creates enhanced criminal liability. The Federal Bureau of Investigation Military Liaison investigation was revealing that Lisa's asset theft was part of broader civilian schemes targeting deployed military families through systematic exploitation of deployment vulnerabilities and family relationships. Lisa's coordination with David suggests systematic targeting of military personnel during deployment periods, FBI investigator Torres reported. Their activities threaten federal military protection systems. The Department of Defense financial management investigation was triggered when federal investigators discovered that Lisa's deployment exploitation could affect military personnel, financial readiness, and deployment effectiveness across multiple service branches. Lisa's systematic deployment exploitation threatens military family financial stability and service member readiness, DoD investigator Jennifer Walsh explained. The comprehensive evidence compilation was supporting federal charges that could result in substantial prison time, plus complete restitution of stolen military assets and enhanced penalties for deployment exploitation violations. Lisa's documented activities support federal charges that carry combined penalties exceeding 15 years in federal prison, federal prosecutor Sarah Wilson explained. The international implications were also significant, as Lisa's exploitation of counterintelligence deployment could compromise military operations and strategic security coordination with allied forces in Afghanistan. Lisa's access to deployment operational information threatens counterintelligence operations and allied military coordination, Pentagon security analyst Robert Kim noted. Her exploitation activities create security risks for international military cooperation. The Military Family Support Investigation was examining whether Lisa's deployment exploitation represented broader threats to military spouse financial education and deployment family protection programs. Lisa's systematic exploitation may indicate vulnerabilities in military family financial education and deployment protection protocols, Military Family Services Coordinator noted. The asset recovery process was identifying unauthorized transfers that Lisa and David had attempted to hide through multiple banking institutions and investment accounts designed to obscure military asset theft trails. Lisa and David transferred stolen military assets through multiple civilian accounts to prevent recovery. Asset recovery specialist Linda Thompson reported. Their systematic hiding activities prove consciousness of guilt. But the most significant development was the Pentagon's recognition that my systematic documentation had prevented potential compromise of counterintelligence operations while enabling comprehensive federal investigation during active combat deployment. Staff Sergeant Stone's military financial documentation prevented major operational security compromise while providing comprehensive evidence for federal prosecution, Pentagon Military Justice Director Colonel Patricia Stevens noted. The coordinated federal response was ensuring that Lisa's deployment exploitation would result in both complete asset recovery and maximum criminal accountability while protecting military operational security and federal service member protection systems. Multiple agency coordination ensures comprehensive asset recovery while preventing additional deployment exploitation targeting military families, Captain Martinez observed. Lisa's systematic exploitation of my combat deployment was about to encounter coordinated federal military enforcement that would expose the full scope of her crimes while ensuring appropriate protection for both personal military assets and broader service member protection systems. The evidence I had compiled through military financial protocols was enabling federal agencies to build comprehensive cases that addressed both individual fraud and broader threats to military family security and deployment effectiveness. Have you ever required coordination between military legal assistance and federal protection agencies to address systematic asset theft targeting deployed service members? Sometimes military financial documentation becomes essential for protecting both individual service members and broader military family security during combat deployments. The coordinated federal investigation that began executing 6 weeks after my initial military legal complaint created immediate pressure on both Lisa and David while exposing the systematic nature of their deployment exploitation to military investigators, federal prosecutors, and banking compliance officers who had been unaware of their coordinated scheme to steal assets from deployed service members. The emergency asset protection orders that the Military Criminal Investigative Service implemented after reviewing my comprehensive evidence immediately prevented Lisa from accessing additional military accounts while securing federal oversight of all future financial activities affecting service member assets. Mrs. Stone is subject to immediate federal oversight of all financial activities affecting military assets, pending resolution of systematic deployment exploitation charges, MCIS Director Colonel Sarah Wilson announced. Her documented asset theft creates immediate military protection violations that require comprehensive federal intervention. Lisa's response to the federal oversight orders revealed her growing panic as she realized that her deployment exploitation had triggered multiple military investigations and potential federal prosecution rather than the simple family financial assistance she had claimed. Lisa's emergency legal motions show desperation about federal oversight and recognition that her asset theft constitutes federal military crimes, Captain Martinez observed. Her legal strategy indicates understanding that criminal prosecution is inevitable. The federal criminal charges that military prosecutors filed included systematic deployment exploitation, asset theft from deployed service members, and conspiracy to defraud military personnel that carried potential sentences exceeding 20 years in federal military prison. Mrs. Stone and Mr. David Chen face multiple felony charges, including deployment exploitation, asset theft, and conspiracy to defraud military service members. Federal Prosecutor Wilson announced. Their systematic military asset theft constitutes serious federal crimes that threaten service member protection and deployment readiness. David's involvement created additional criminal liability, as investigators discovered that he had systematically studied military financial protection laws while coordinating with Lisa to exploit deployment vulnerabilities for personal financial benefit. David Chen's civilian participation in military asset theft creates enhanced federal criminal exposure, Prosecutor Wilson noted. His coordination with military spouse exploitation constitutes conspiracy to violate federal service member protection laws. But the most damaging development for both conspirators was the military family victim impact investigation that revealed their asset theft had compromised not just individual finances, but military family stability and deployment effectiveness. Lisa and David's asset theft affected military family financial security and service member deployment readiness, military family advocate Jennifer Adams reported. Their systematic exploitation threatened military personnel effectiveness and family support systems. The Department of Defense Inspector General investigation was expanding to examine whether Lisa's deployment exploitation represented broader threats to military spouse financial education and service member asset protection programs across multiple military installations. Lisa's systematic exploitation may indicate vulnerabilities in military family financial protection and deployment security protocols, IG investigator Walsh noted. Her activities threaten comprehensive military family support systems. The Federal Trade Commission investigation was revealing that Lisa's coordination with David constituted systematic commercial fraud targeting military families during deployment periods through exploitation of family relationships and military vulnerabilities. Lisa's coordination with David represents systematic exploitation of military deployment situations for unauthorized asset acquisition, FTC investigator Robert Torres reported. Their activities threaten military family financial protection and commercial military support systems. The asset recovery process was proceeding rapidly as federal investigators traced stolen military assets through multiple civilian accounts while implementing comprehensive restitution procedures for all affected service member assets. Stolen military assets have been located and secured through multiple banking institutions, asset recovery specialist Thompson reported. Lisa and David's hiding attempts were unsuccessful due to comprehensive federal tracking capabilities. The plea negotiations that Lisa's civilian attorneys initiated revealed their recognition that the comprehensive evidence made federal conviction inevitable, while military asset recovery was proceeding under federal protection laws. Lisa's legal team is requesting plea negotiations due to overwhelming evidence of systematic deployment exploitation, Prosecutor Wilson reported. Her federal military exposure eliminates most defense strategies. But Lisa's emotional breakdown during federal military interrogation revealed the psychological pressure of facing multiple military crime charges and recognition that her deployment exploitation scheme would result in substantial federal penalties and potential military court-martial proceedings. Lisa broke down completely when federal military investigators presented evidence of her systematic deployment exploitation, MCIS investigator Rodriguez reported. Her confession included admission of fraudulent intent and civilian coordination with David. The confession provided federal investigators with detailed information about Lisa's deployment exploitation methods and civilian coordination, while identifying additional military families who might be vulnerable to similar systematic asset theft schemes. Lisa's cooperation revealed systematic targeting of military families during deployment periods, Prosecutor Wilson noted. Her confession provides evidence for protecting additional service member families from deployment exploitation. David's criminal exposure was expanding as federal investigators discovered that his coordination with Lisa was part of broader civilian schemes targeting military spouse financial vulnerabilities during deployment periods. David's participation in military asset theft extends to systematic targeting of military families through spouse relationship exploitation, federal investigator noted. The military justice proceedings were proceeding parallel to federal civilian prosecution, ensuring that Lisa's deployment exploitation would result in both military disciplinary action and comprehensive federal criminal accountability. Military justice provides immediate service member protection, while federal prosecution ensures maximum criminal penalties for deployment exploitation, Captain Martinez explained. The professional reputation recovery within military intelligence was exceeding expectations as counterintelligence colleagues and commanding officers appreciated my systematic approach to exposing deployment exploitation while maintaining operational effectiveness. Staff Sergeant Stone's documentation and federal reporting demonstrates exactly the kind of professional integrity needed for military intelligence operations, noted evaluation from Lieutenant Colonel David Chen. The operational security assessment was revealing that Lisa's deployment exploitation had been contained without compromising counterintelligence operations or strategic military planning through systematic security protocols and rapid federal intervention. Stone's systematic security measures prevented operational compromise while enabling comprehensive federal investigation, Pentagon Security Review noted. The Military Criminal Investigative Service was using our deployment exploitation documentation as model evidence for detecting and preventing systematic asset theft targeting deployed service members and military families. Stone's systematic documentation and federal reporting provide excellent examples of protecting military family assets during deployment periods, MCIS Training Director Patricia Newman noted. The speaking opportunities at military family financial education conferences and service member protection seminars were generating additional recognition while establishing my reputation as an expert in deployment exploitation detection and military family asset protection. Stone's experience demonstrates how systematic documentation and federal reporting can expose and prevent military family financial exploitation, observed conference organizer Major Jennifer Walsh. Lisa's systematic deployment exploitation was about to result in comprehensive federal military accountability, while validating systematic financial documentation and military protection laws as essential safeguards for service member families and deployment effectiveness. The coordinated federal response had transformed attempted military asset theft into enhanced professional recognition, while demonstrating the effectiveness of systematic documentation and federal oversight during deployment exploitation schemes targeting military families. Have you ever seen systematic deployment exploitation completely defeated through coordinated military and federal enforcement that protected both individual service members and broader military family security? Sometimes comprehensive documentation and federal reporting create military-wide protection while ensuring appropriate criminal accountability for deployment exploitation violations. The comprehensive resolution of Lisa's deployment exploitation case occurred within 10 months of my initial military legal complaint, delivering complete asset recovery, enhanced security clearance status, and federal criminal accountability that exceeded initial expectations, while establishing new military family protection standards for preventing systematic asset theft during combat deployments. Lisa's guilty plea on all federal charges included systematic deployment exploitation, asset theft from deployed service members, conspiracy, and violation of military family protection laws that resulted in an 8-year federal prison sentence, plus permanent prohibition from military spouse benefits, and complete restitution of stolen military assets. Mrs. Stone's systematic exploitation of deployed service member assets represents a serious violation of military family trust and federal law, Federal Judge Patricia Stevens stated during sentencing. Her coordination with civilian accomplices to steal military assets during combat deployment warrants maximum punishment under federal military protection guidelines. David's guilty plea on conspiracy and civilian participation in military asset theft resulted in a 6-year federal prison sentence, plus complete asset forfeiture and restitution obligations that would continue throughout his parole supervision period. Mr. Chen's civilian participation in systematic military asset theft constitutes serious federal crime that threatens service member family security, Judge Stevens noted. His exploitation of military spouse relationships for personal financial gain requires substantial federal accountability. But beyond financial recovery, Lisa's prosecution created Department of Defense recognition of systematic financial documentation as essential protection against deployment exploitation and military family asset theft during combat operations. Stone's comprehensive military financial documentation provided the evidentiary foundation for the most successful deployment exploitation prosecution in federal military court history, Pentagon Military Justice Director Colonel David Martinez noted. His systematic approach should be adopted by all military personnel facing deployment vulnerabilities and family financial risks. The professional opportunities that resulted from my ethical handling of Lisa's deployment exploitation exceeded anything our original marriage relationship could have provided for military career development and intelligence specialization. Stone Intelligence Solutions, the independent counterintelligence consulting firm I established using asset recovery proceeds and enhanced security clearance status, was attracting Defense Department clients who valued proven analytical capabilities and comprehensive security integrity. Michael's exposure of systematic deployment exploitation demonstrates exactly the kind of security integrity we need for sensitive counterintelligence consulting projects, noted client testimonial from Defense Intelligence Agency Director Jennifer Adams. The counterintelligence consulting practice was generating annual revenue of $480,000 while providing professional satisfaction that focused on advanced security analysis rather than family financial protection and deployment exploitation prevention. Independent counterintelligence consulting with comprehensive security protocols allows complete focus on strategic analysis excellence, I reflected during professional development presentations. The former military colleagues who joined Stone Intelligence Solutions as senior analysts represented validation that my intelligence expertise and ethical standards created more value than Lisa's unauthorized asset liquidation schemes. Michael's systematic approach to security analysis and ethical intelligence practices provide reliability and clearance capabilities that justify premium counterintelligence consulting fees, explained personnel metrics showing recruitment of 3 senior intelligence specialists. The speaking opportunities at military family conferences and deployment protection seminars were generating additional revenue while establishing my reputation as an expert in deployment exploitation prevention and military family asset protection. Stone's experience demonstrates how comprehensive financial documentation can expose and prevent systematic military family exploitation, observed conference organizer Major Jennifer Walsh. The Department of Defense had implemented enhanced deployment protection recommendations based on Lisa's exploitation case, creating new military family standards for preventing systematic asset theft during combat operations and overseas assignments. Stone's financial protection protocols have become model practices for military families seeking to prevent deployment exploitation while maintaining comprehensive asset security, DoD Family Services Director Lisa Chen noted. Lisa's complete personal and legal destruction served as military community warning about the consequences of systematic deployment exploitation and the importance of ethical military family relationships during combat service. The Stone prosecution sends clear messages throughout the military community about federal enforcement capabilities for deployment exploitation and family asset theft, legal analyst Patricia Newman observed. But the most meaningful outcome was validation of systematic financial documentation and military protection laws as reliable safeguards against family asset theft during deployment periods and combat operations. Lisa's prosecution proves that comprehensive financial documentation and ethical military service create sustainable career advantages, I observed during ethics workshops. The military intelligence recognition I received for deployment exploitation prevention expertise had generated consulting opportunities and strategic partnerships that exceeded the financial benefits of traditional military marriage arrangements. Stone's ethical handling of deployment exploitation demonstrates intelligence integrity that attracts both government contracts and military collaboration opportunities, defense consultant Sarah Davis noted. The enhanced security clearance status I had achieved through ethical reporting was providing access to advanced classified projects and consulting opportunities that reflected superior counterintelligence capabilities and verified military trust. Stone Intelligence Solutions' proven security capabilities and comprehensive deployment protection expertise provide access to the most sensitive counterintelligence projects, client testimonial showed. The comprehensive legal victory had demonstrated that systematic documentation and military protection laws provided more reliable asset security than family relationships based on convenience rather than verified military support standards and ethical safeguards. Professional competence in security analysis creates career advantages that transcend individual family arrangements, I noted during military career seminars. Lisa's systematic deployment exploitation during my combat service had inadvertently created opportunities for enhanced military independence, federal recognition, and meaningful intelligence work that exceeded anything our original marriage could have achieved. Sometimes the most systematic family betrayal creates catalysts for independent success and enhanced security standards, I reflected during professional development workshops. The financial documentation methods that had exposed Lisa's exploitation were being adopted by military families while generating ongoing consultation revenue and Pentagon recognition for deployment protection expertise. Stone's deployment protection protocols provide comprehensive security against family exploitation while supporting legitimate military family operations, noted licensing agreement with Military Family Financial Protection Association. Lisa's attempt to steal military assets while exploiting my combat deployment had ultimately created opportunities for enhanced military independence, Pentagon leadership recognition, and meaningful counterintelligence work that exceeded anything traditional military marriage arrangements could have provided. The systematic approach to financial protection that had defeated coordinated deployment exploitation was providing sustainable competitive advantages that attracted the most sophisticated counterintelligence projects available to veteran-owned security firms with proven military integrity. Have you ever discovered that military financial documentation could transform attempted deployment exploitation into opportunities for enhanced career success and Pentagon recognition? Sometimes comprehensive military protection becomes the foundation for independent success that exceeds traditional family benefits while serving national security interests. Standing in the Secure Operations Center of Stone Intelligence Solutions 18 months after Lisa's conviction and imprisonment, I reflected on how her systematic theft of our military assets during my Afghanistan deployment had inadvertently transformed my career from traditional military service to industry leadership in counterintelligence analysis and deployment security protection. The independent consulting firm had grown to generate $640,000 in annual revenue, while serving Defense Department clients who valued proven analytical capabilities and comprehensive security integrity above traditional military consulting approaches. The 3,800 square foot SCIF-certified facility accommodated advanced counterintelligence analysis capabilities and comprehensive military family protection consultation services that supported both routine defense contractor projects and specialized deployment security initiatives that had become my professional specialty through Pentagon recognition and enhanced security clearance status. Working with a counterintelligence analyst who has personally tested comprehensive deployment protection provides confidence and security integrity that eliminates concerns about family exploitation and asset manipulation during overseas operations, noted senior intelligence analyst Patricia Lynch, a former Defense Intelligence Agency specialist who had joined our team. The counterintelligence consulting practice I had established was generating substantially higher income than my original military salary, while providing professional satisfaction that focused on advanced security analysis rather than family financial protection and deployment exploitation prevention. Stone Intelligence Solutions' systematic approach to counterintelligence analysis and ethical security practices provides intelligence capabilities that exceed traditional military consulting standards. Client testimonial from Pentagon Intelligence Operations Director Colonel Michael Torres noted, "The business expansion that had resulted from Lisa's prosecution, combined with Pentagon recognition for deployment exploitation prevention expertise, had created professional opportunities that exceeded anything achievable through traditional military career progression with shared family vulnerabilities." Michael's transformation from exploitation victim to industry security leader demonstrates how systematic integrity and comprehensive documentation create lasting competitive advantages in counterintelligence consulting, Defense Intelligence Quarterly observed. But the most significant achievement was Pentagon recognition that established me as the definitive expert in deployment exploitation prevention and systematic military family protection for defense personnel facing overseas assignment vulnerabilities and family security risks. Stone's experience provides unique insights into preventing and detecting deployment exploitation that threatens both individual military families and broader defense readiness capabilities. Military Family Security Review noted, the Defense Intelligence Agency had requested my participation in developing enhanced deployment protection standards and family security protocols that would protect military personnel from systematic asset theft and family exploitation during combat operations. Stone's financial documentation methods and exploitation detection expertise provide essential guidance for strengthening military family protection throughout the defense intelligence community. DIA Security Policy Committee Chair Colonel David Martinez explained, annual speaking engagements at military conferences, deployment security seminars, and professional intelligence workshops were generating supplemental income of $115,000 while reinforcing my expertise in systematic documentation and ethical military family protection. Stone's systematic approach to deployment security and family exploitation prevention has become the industry standard for military personnel serving in high-risk overseas assignments, National Military Family Association President Jennifer Adams observed. Lisa's 8-year federal prison sentence had concluded with complete asset forfeiture, permanent military spouse benefit prohibition, and ongoing restitution obligations that would continue throughout her supervised release period. Lisa Stone's systematic deployment exploitation resulted in the most comprehensive military family prosecution in federal court history, Prosecutor Wilson noted. Her case demonstrates that family asset theft during combat deployments carries severe criminal consequences that cannot be avoided through spouse relationship claims or family emergency justifications. David's 6-year imprisonment had concluded with complete civilian asset forfeiture and permanent prohibition from military family financial services, serving as warning throughout civilian communities about the consequences of participating in military family exploitation. Chen's civilian participation in military asset theft demonstrates that deployment exploitation carries serious federal consequences regardless of family relationship or civilian status, Prosecutor Wilson observed. But their prosecutions had also created enhanced protection for military family security by establishing legal precedents that strengthened deployment exploitation enforcement and family asset protection capabilities. The Stone prosecution clarified federal enforcement capabilities for systematic deployment exploitation and established deterrent effects throughout the military family community, legal analyst Robert Kim observed. The military family protection methodologies I had developed and refined through personal experience with systematic deployment exploitation were generating licensing revenue from military installations who needed proven protection frameworks while ensuring proper federal implementation and ethical oversight. Stone's deployment protection protocols provide comprehensive security against family exploitation while supporting legitimate military family operations and optimal deployment readiness, noted licensing agreement with Military Family Protection Network. The professional reputation I had built through ethical crisis management was attracting strategic consultation opportunities with major defense organizations who valued demonstrated integrity and systematic deployment security expertise. Stone Intelligence Solutions' proven security standards and comprehensive family protection capabilities make them ideal partners for the most sensitive military family initiatives and deployment security programs, explained consulting agreement with Pentagon-based Defense Consortium. Looking back on Lisa's systematic betrayal and attempted theft of our military assets, I realized that her sophisticated deployment exploitation had inadvertently created opportunities for professional growth, Pentagon recognition, and counterintelligence success that exceeded anything traditional military marriage could have provided. Sometimes the most comprehensive family betrayal becomes the catalyst for professional development and Pentagon recognition that transforms entire career trajectories into defense intelligence leadership, I observed during military excellence conferences. The systematic financial documentation that had exposed Lisa's exploitation was serving as the foundation for expanded consultation services that helped other military personnel prevent family exploitation while maintaining ethical service standards and comprehensive deployment protection. Lisa's exploitation attempt validated the commercial value of systematic military protection while creating legal precedents that enhanced defense community-wide family security, I noted during professional development workshops. The comprehensive legal victory had demonstrated that systematic documentation and military protection laws provided more reliable career security than family relationships based on convenience rather than verified military support standards and deployment commitment. Professional competence in systematic deployment protection and ethical military service creates sustainable competitive advantages that transcend individual family arrangements or spouse relationship strategies, I explained during Pentagon security presentations. Lisa's attempt to steal military assets while exploiting my combat deployment had ultimately strengthened my professional position while creating consultation opportunities and Pentagon recognition that established Stone Intelligence Solutions as the Southwest's leading advocate for ethical military service and comprehensive deployment family protection. The people who attempt to exploit military deployment through systematic family asset theft sometimes end up creating opportunities for their victims to achieve greater success through validated expertise and comprehensive Pentagon recognition, I reflected during military leadership seminars. The experience had proven that professional competence in systematic documentation and ethical military service could transform attempted deployment exploitation into enhanced consulting success and Pentagon authority that exceeded original military compensation arrangements. Lisa's systematic family betrayal had inadvertently provided the foundation for building Pentagon recognition, professional leadership, and counterintelligence expansion that represented the most successful and meaningful period in my 12-year military career. Professional relationships built on systematic integrity and verified security standards prove more durable and valuable than family relationships based on convenient arrangements or spouse benefits that can be compromised through exploitative activities and deployment manipulation. The counterintelligence firm that had emerged from systematic deployment exploitation attempts was generating higher revenue, enhanced Pentagon recognition, and more meaningful security relationships than anything traditional military marriage could have achieved. Have you discovered that systematic military documentation and ethical service can transform attempted deployment exploitation into opportunities for professional growth and Pentagon recognition? Sometimes, the most sophisticated family betrayal becomes the foundation for building enhanced competitive advantages through validated expertise and comprehensive defense intelligence authority. If this story of systematic documentation and military family protection resonated with you, please hit that subscribe button to Revenge Tales with Luke. Share your experiences with deployment exploitation and military family security in the comments below. Your story might help someone else who's facing similar challenges with systematic family asset theft and deployment manipulation during overseas service. See you in our next story.